In a world where millions watched through television screens and thousands gathered along London streets, a small moment of pure human connection unfolded on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. While military bands played and jets soared overhead in perfect formation, the real story wasn't about pomp and ceremony. It was about a 9-year-old girl who understood something profound about family, responsibility, and the quiet strength that comes from looking after those we love. Princess Charlotte of Wales didn't know that cameras would capture her gentle guidance of her younger brother that day. She didn't plan to become a symbol of sisterly devotion or childhood wisdom. She simply did what felt natural when she saw her 4-year-old brother Prince Louis struggling with the overwhelming spectacle around them. In those precious moments, Charlotte showed the world that sometimes the most powerful acts of leadership happen not on grand stages, but in the simple gesture of taking a little brother's hand and whispering, "It's going to be okay." This is the story of how a young princess discovered her own strength while helping someone she loved find his calm in the storm of royal duty and public attention. The morning of June 11th, 2022, began like many others at Adelaide Cottage, but Charlotte could sense something different in the air. Her parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, moved with that particular energy that came before big royal events. There was careful attention to details, quiet conversations between adults, and an underlying excitement that seemed to fill every room of their home. Charlotte had experienced several trooping the color ceremonies before, but this year felt special. At 9 years old, she was becoming more aware of what these events meant, not just for her family, but for the thousands of people who would line the streets of London to watch. She understood that today wasn't just about pretty dresses and waving from balconies. It was about tradition, about showing respect for the Queen, and about being part of something much bigger than herself. As she got ready that morning, Charlotte noticed how carefully her mother helped her choose the right outfit. The navy blue dress with its white collar was perfect for the occasion, elegant but not too formal, appropriate for a young princess who was still very much a child. Catherine took extra time with Charlotte's hair, making sure every strand was in place, but Charlotte's mind wasn't on her appearance. She was thinking about Louis. Her little brother had been excited about the event for weeks, talking about the horses and the soldiers and all the colorful uniforms they would see. But Charlotte had also noticed the moments when Louis seemed overwhelmed by the preparation, when he would get that particular look in his eyes that meant he was feeling unsure about something. At 4 years old, Louis was brave and spirited, but big public events could sometimes feel like too much, even for someone as confident as he usually was. During breakfast, Charlotte watched as Louis fidgeted with his breakfast, his enthusiasm from earlier in the week now mixed with what looked like nervousness. He kept asking questions about what would happen, how long they would have to stand, and whether it would be very loud. William and Catherine answered each question patiently, but Charlotte could see that Louis was building up that anxious energy that sometimes made it hard for him to sit still or focus. The drive to Buckingham Palace gave Charlotte time to think about what the day might bring. She had learned from previous events that being part of the royal family meant being watched by many people, and that sometimes that attention could feel heavy, especially for someone Louis's age. She remembered her own early experiences with public events, how overwhelming it could feel to have so many eyes on you, so many cameras pointing in your direction. As her car approached the palace, Charlotte could see the crowds already gathering along the route. People held flags and banners, children sat on their parents' shoulders, and there was an atmosphere of celebration that made her smile. But she also noticed how Louis seemed to shrink back a little from the window when he saw just how many people were waiting to see them. Inside the palace, the preparation continued with the kind of organized efficiency that Charlotte had come to expect from these events. Staff members moved with purpose, checking schedules and coordinating timing. The children were given final instructions about where they would stand, when they would wave, and how long the ceremony would last. Louis listened carefully, but Charlotte could see that he was becoming more overwhelmed with each new piece of information. The royal family gathered in one of the palace's elegant rooms, before making their way to the balcony. Charlotte stood near Louis, noticing how he kept looking around at all the adults, all the formal atmosphere, all the serious conversations happening around them. She could sense that he was trying to be brave, trying to do everything right, but that the weight of the occasion was starting to feel too heavy for his small shoulders. When the time came to move toward the balcony, Charlotte made a quiet decision. She positioned herself close to Louis, not in an obvious way that would draw attention, but near enough that she could offer support if he needed it. She had learned from watching her parents that sometimes the most important help comes not from big gestures, but from simply being present when someone needs you. The sound from outside was already building as they approached the balcony doors. The military bands were playing, crowds were cheering, and there was an energy in the air that was both exciting and potentially overwhelming. Charlotte could see Louis taking it all in, his eyes wide as he processed the magnitude of what was happening around them. As they stepped onto the balcony, the sound hit them like a wave. Thousands of voices cheering, military music playing, and the general excitement of a major royal celebration. The view from the balcony showed a sea of people stretching as far as the eye could see, all gathered to mark this important day. For adults who were used to such events, it was magnificent. For a 4-year-old boy, it was potentially overwhelming. Charlotte watched as Louis tried to take in everything at once. The crowds, the noise, the cameras, the expectation that he would wave and smile and be the perfect little prince. She could see him starting to feel the pressure, starting to look uncertain about what he should do or how he should react. His usual confidence was wavering under the weight of so much attention and expectation. The formal part of the ceremony continued around them, with various members of the royal family taking their positions and participating in the traditional aspects of the event. But Charlotte's attention was focused on her brother, watching for signs that he might need help managing his emotions or his response to everything happening around them. As the minutes passed, she could see Louis struggling more and more with the intensity of the situation. He was trying so hard to be good, to do everything right, to live up to the expectations that came with being part of such an important family. But at 4 years old, even with all the preparation in the world, the reality of standing in front of thousands of people while cameras captured your every expression could feel overwhelming. Charlotte understood something important in that moment. She realized that sometimes being helpful wasn't about waiting to be asked or waiting for adults to notice that someone needed support. Sometimes it meant paying attention, being aware of what the people you care about are experiencing, and being ready to offer comfort or guidance when they need it most. The ceremony continued with its traditional elements, each moment carefully choreographed and full of historical significance. But for Charlotte, the most important thing happening on that balcony wasn't the formal celebration or the public display of royal unity. It was the opportunity to show her little brother that he wasn't alone, that family means looking out for each other, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help or accept support when you need it. The moment when Charlotte truly stepped into her role as protective big sister came when she noticed Louis starting to show signs of real distress. While the adults around them were focused on the ceremony, on waving to the crowds, and on maintaining the dignified presence expected during such events, Charlotte was watching her brother with the careful attention that comes naturally to children who care deeply about their siblings. Louis had been trying so hard to be brave, to stand properly, and to participate in all the right ways. But Charlotte could see the telltale signs that he was reaching his limit. His shoulders were tense, his expression was becoming more uncertain, and he kept looking around as if searching for an escape from the intensity of the situation. The cheering crowds, the military music, the cameras, and the general overwhelming nature of the event were becoming too much for him to handle. What happened next would be remembered by millions of people who watched the ceremony, though many of them might not have fully understood the significance of what they were witnessing. Charlotte, without drawing attention to herself or making a big display of her actions, quietly moved closer to Louis. She positioned herself so that she could offer him support while still maintaining the appropriate posture and behavior expected during such a formal event. The cameras caught the moment when Charlotte gently placed her hand on Louis's arm, a small gesture that spoke volumes about her understanding of what he needed. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, but it was exactly the right response to help him feel less alone in that overwhelming situation. Her touch was gentle but steady, a physical reminder that his big sister was there, and that he didn't have to handle everything by himself. Charlotte, then, did something that demonstrated wisdom far beyond her 9 years. She leaned slightly toward Louis and began speaking to him in quiet, reassuring tones. The cameras couldn't pick up her exact words, but her body language and expression made it clear that she was offering comfort and guidance. She wasn't trying to fix everything for him or take over completely, but rather helping him find his own way to cope with the challenging situation. What made Charlotte's approach so remarkable was how naturally she seemed to understand what Louis needed. She didn't overwhelm him with instructions or make him feel worse about struggling. Instead, she offered the kind of steady, calming presence that helped him feel more secure. Her voice was gentle but confident, giving Louis something to focus on besides the overwhelming spectacle around them. As Charlotte continued to offer quiet support, Louis began to visibly relax. His posture became less rigid, his expression grew calmer, and he started to look around with curiosity rather than anxiety. Charlotte's presence seemed to create a small bubble of security within the larger, more overwhelming environment of the public ceremony. She had found a way to help him without making him feel weak or incapable. The transformation in Louis was gradual, but noticeable, with Charlotte beside him, offering gentle guidance and reassurance. He began to find his footing in the situation. He started to wave to the crowds with more confidence. His smile became more natural, and he seemed to remember that this was supposed to be a celebration rather than something to endure. Charlotte's support had helped him access his own natural resilience and enthusiasm. Throughout this process, Charlotte never made Louis feel like he was failing or doing anything wrong. Her approach was entirely focused on helping him succeed rather than correcting his behavior. She understood instinctively that what he needed wasn't criticism or pressure, but rather patience, understanding, and the knowledge that someone was looking out for him. The way Charlotte managed to provide this support, while still fulfilling her own role in the ceremony, demonstrated remarkable maturity and social awareness. She was able to help Louis while also maintaining appropriate behavior for the formal occasion, showing that she understood the importance of the event while prioritizing her brother's well-being. This balance between duty and family care showed a sophisticated understanding of what it means to be part of the royal family. As the ceremony progressed, other family members began to notice the positive change in Louis's demeanor. Prince William and Princess Catherine, who had been keeping a careful eye on both their children, could see that Charlotte's intervention had been exactly what Louis needed. The relief in their expressions was subtle, but clear to anyone who knew how to read the body language of parents watching their children navigate a challenging situation. The crowds below seemed to sense something special happening on the balcony as well. While they might not have been able to see all the details of Charlotte's support for Louis, they could see the warmth and connection between the siblings. The genuine affection and care between Charlotte and Louis added an authentic, human element to the formal ceremony that resonated with people watching both in person and through television coverage. Charlotte's actions during this period of the ceremony also demonstrated something important about leadership and responsibility. At 9 years old, she was already showing an understanding that being part of a family, especially a family in the public eye, means looking out for each other. She was learning that strength isn't just about individual achievement, but about using whatever abilities you have to help the people you care about succeed and feel secure. The military flypast was approaching, which would mark the climax of the ceremony and potentially the most overwhelming moment for Louis. Charlotte seemed to sense this, positioning herself so that she could continue to offer support during what might be the most challenging part of the entire event. She was thinking ahead, anticipating what her brother might need, and preparing to provide whatever help would be most useful. As the jets approached overhead, the noise level increased dramatically. The roar of the engines, combined with the cheering of the crowds and the general excitement of the moment, created a sensory experience that could easily overwhelm a young child. Charlotte stayed close to Lewis, ready to provide reassurance if the intensity of the flypast became too much for him to handle comfortably. Her preparation and attention paid off. When the jets finally thundered overhead in their precise formation, Lewis was ready for them. Thanks to Charlotte's steady support and guidance, he was able to enjoy the spectacle rather than be overwhelmed by it. He pointed up at the planes with genuine excitement, his earlier anxiety replaced by wonder and enthusiasm. Charlotte watched with visible satisfaction as her brother experienced joy rather than stress during this culminating moment of the ceremony. The final phase of the ceremony brought with it a sense of accomplishment and relief that was visible in both Charlotte and Lewis. As the military flypast concluded and the formal requirements of the event began to wind down, Charlotte could see that her efforts had been successful. Lewis was no longer struggling with overwhelming anxiety or uncertainty. Instead, he was engaged, smiling, and clearly enjoying the experience that had initially seemed too challenging for him to handle. The transformation in Lewis was remarkable to witness. Where earlier he had appeared tense and uncertain, now he was waving enthusiastically to the crowds, pointing out interesting details to Charlotte, and generally behaving like the confident, spirited little boy he was in more familiar settings. Charlotte's support had helped him find his way back to his natural personality, even within the formal constraints of the royal ceremony. What made this transformation even more significant was how it reflected Charlotte's growing understanding of her own role and capabilities. At 9 years old, she had discovered that she possessed skills and instincts that could make a real difference in someone else's experience. She had learned that paying attention, offering gentle support, and staying calm under pressure could help someone she cared about overcome significant challenges. The reactions of the adults around them told their own story. Prince William and Princess Catherine watched their children with expressions that mixed pride, relief, and perhaps a touch of amazement at how well Charlotte had handled the situation. They had seen their daughter step into a leadership role naturally and effectively, demonstrating maturity and compassion that went far beyond what might typically be expected from someone her age. Queen Elizabeth II, who had witnessed countless royal ceremonies and family moments throughout her long reign, also seemed to notice the special dynamic between Charlotte and Lewis. The Queen understood better than anyone how challenging public appearances could be, especially for young children, and she could see that Charlotte had provided exactly the kind of support that makes such occasions manageable rather than overwhelming. As the family prepared to leave the balcony, Charlotte made sure that Lewis felt confident about the transition. She explained what would happen next, reminded him of how well he had done, and generally helped him process the experience in a positive way. Her focus wasn't on receiving praise for her own actions, but on ensuring that Lewis felt good about his participation in the ceremony. The walk back through the palace provided an opportunity for quiet conversation between the siblings. Away from the crowds and cameras, Charlotte and Lewis could talk about what they had experienced together. Lewis expressed his gratitude in the straightforward way that 4-year-olds do, telling Charlotte how much better he felt when she was helping him. Charlotte, for her part, seemed to understand that what she had done was significant, though she approached it with the natural humility of a child who had simply done what felt right. The impact of Charlotte's actions extended far beyond the immediate family. People who watched the ceremony, whether in person or through television coverage, were touched by the genuine care and support they witnessed between the siblings. In a world where royal events can sometimes feel distant or formal, Charlotte's protective behavior toward Lewis provided a moment of authentic human connection that resonated with audiences around the globe. Social media responses to the ceremony highlighted how moved people were by Charlotte's sisterly support. Parents recognized the universal experience of an older child helping a younger sibling through a challenging situation. The fact that this took place during such a formal, high-profile event made it even more powerful, showing that family love and support transcends circumstances and settings. For Charlotte herself, the day represented a significant step in her personal development. She had faced a challenging situation, recognized what was needed, and responded with confidence and effectiveness. More importantly, she had learned that helping others doesn't require dramatic gestures or special training. Sometimes the most meaningful support comes from simply being present, paying attention, and offering gentle guidance when it's needed most. The experience also strengthened the bond between Charlotte and Lewis in ways that would extend far beyond this single event. Lewis had learned that he could count on his sister for support when facing difficult situations. Charlotte had discovered the satisfaction that comes from using your abilities to help someone you care about succeed and feel secure. These lessons would serve both children well as they continued to grow up in the unique environment of royal family life. The ceremony ended with the family returning to the private areas of the palace, where they could relax and reflect on the day's events without the pressure of public observation. In these quiet moments, Charlotte and Lewis could simply be siblings again, playing and talking without the formal requirements that had structured their morning. But the experience of supporting each other through the public ceremony had added a new dimension to their relationship. Prince William and Princess Catherine took time to acknowledge what Charlotte had done, not in a way that made her feel pressured to repeat such behavior, but in recognition of the kindness and maturity she had shown. They understood that Charlotte had acted out of genuine care for her brother rather than from a sense of obligation, and they wanted to encourage that natural compassion while allowing her to remain child. As the day concluded and the family prepared to return home, Charlotte could look back on the ceremony with a sense of satisfaction that went beyond successfully completing their royal duties. She had discovered something important about herself and about the power of offering support to someone who needs it. The confidence and capabilities she had shown would stay with her, becoming part of the foundation for her continued growth and development. The story of Charlotte's support for Lewis during Trooping the Color became one of those moments that people remember long after the formal details of the ceremony fade. It represented something timeless and universal about family relationships, about the responsibility we feel for people we love, and about the quiet strength that can emerge when we focus on helping others rather than just ourselves. Years later, when Charlotte and Lewis are adults, they may look back on this day as one of the defining moments in their relationship as siblings. Charlotte will remember learning that she had the ability to make a real difference in someone else's experience. Lewis will remember feeling supported and cared for during a challenging time. Together, they will carry forward the knowledge that family means being there for each other, especially when the world feels overwhelming and uncertain. The lasting impact of Charlotte's actions that day extends beyond the immediate family to everyone who witnessed her gentle strength and protective care. In a world that often focuses on individual achievement and personal success, Charlotte reminded people of the importance of looking out for others, of using whatever abilities we have to help those we care about navigate their own challenges. Her example showed that true strength often lies not in standing alone, but in reaching out to lift others up when they need support the most.